how long it really does take to buy. I know that you've split it down into 5 different steps of essentially the process and the journey, which can make up that 9-month or that 2-year process for some. The first one is planning. So do you want to just give me a bit of an overall of like step one, like if you're like really, really at the beginning of this first time buyer journey, maybe your best friends have just bought, you're sort of thinking about it, like where do you actually start?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg where I'd say go and get finance or go and look at properties. Like it can be both of those. The reason why I include, because most people would say, oh, just go and speak to a broker, go and speak to a bank, like to get an understanding of if this thing is even real. The only reason why I throw in going and looking at properties, like yeah, if you go with friends or whatever that might be, your family, if you go and start looking at something, and let's just say it's realistic, like it might be a 650, $700,000 purchase, relatively realistic for most people that are in a job and yeah, could service a loan. And you go, this is like, I really want this now. It just adds to your why and it adds to you wanting to make the change. So let's just say you go and look at this property and it's worth $680,000. Then you go and speak to a broker, and the broker turns around and says, "Hey, you're at about 550. I reckon if you saved really hard for the next 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever that might be, we could probably get you into a $700,000 property." Then you're going, "Okay, cool. I've seen what the thing is. Now I need to go and, achieve this goal of saving a little bit more. Maybe it's like getting parents involved or whatever it might be. It just might be that additional thing that you can add that's going to drive you to, achieving this goal. So that's the only reason why I say it's like chicken and egg. But for most people, yeah, go and speak to a broker to get an understanding as to where you sit in its like current day. So a lot of people will freak out at that going and speaking to a broker. And what if they turn around and say that you've only got, capacity for $100,000? Then so be it. Like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and you need to just go and understand where you sit today, and then you can make the adjustments. I wrote this article quite some time ago, but it's it's relevant. And I said time allowance 2 weeks to 8 years. And the reason why I was being a little bit cheeky with the 8 years is because people just piss fart around and don't do this thing and they won't go and take the action. So yeah, don't be the person that waits 8 years and the market moves significantly just to go and find out what your capacity might be.
Mate, I love this as a topic, and I think whenever I'm speaking with people, I say go to it. If you've said, oh, I'm thinking about buying a property in the next couple of years, I'm just like go speak to a broker first, like just immediately, because again, they might say that you're actually ready sooner than you think. It's surprising that quite often people come back to me and think, wow, I actually can borrow a lot more than what I thought I could. I thought that I was going to be a 500, but they've told me I can go straight to 800. Like, let's go shopping. And it's like and they were going to wait another 2 years before that conversation because they didn't think that they were there. But then and the flip side of things as well, like some brokers will be really, really good at helping you create that path and they guide to saving the deposit. And they might say like, hey, you're saving $400 a week or $600 a week, whatever it is. Like, hey, if we stretch this or do that, we're going to be able to get you to your goal faster. And I also really, mate, I love the idea of going actually just start looking at properties. And it brings me to mind with a client that they've told me that they're going to start with us early next year. And they've said to me that I showed them a bunch of properties. I did like a walkthrough sort of video and said, these are some different options that you've got. And they're like, oh, you know what? We don't want to wait any longer. We've put up the partner's motorbike and we're selling that. That's going to bump the deposit up so we can get into that next level. And they didn't even think about that. But then once they actually showed them the properties and what's out there for them, they're like, you know what, we need to get to that level. What can we do? And that's exactly, what you were sort of alluding to. They've just figured it out. They've said, we've got the spare motorbike he hardly uses. Let's get rid of it and get started. And I was like, oh, I love that for like the timeline of it all.
When it's real, like when you can go and see and it's not that far away, it makes you want to make those decisions, right? Like I'm sure the partner doesn't want to sell the motorbike, but he's going to sacrifice that you can buy another one later. So yeah, it just helps with all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so step 2. So you've done the planning. Step 2 is research. So where does the research part sort of come together?
Absolutely. So research is probably where I see people, if you were to take planning out of it, so let's just say you went to the broker and you got your pre-approval. So now we're at day one, or, D-Day. This is the one that slows a lot of people down. So if we were saying the average time for people to go and purchase once they've got a pre-approval is sitting at around that like 6 to 9 months, this is the component, this is the part of the process that really slows people down, is because it takes you, if you're working at this and you're wanting to understand how markets move and how properties sell and just the whole process, if you're really working at it and you're not a professional doing it, it could take you 3 to 4 months just to figure that out. If you're not actively trying to learn it, that could take you 9 to 12 months. It could take you a long time to figure out, actually, if a property's quoted 800,000, there's a high potential it's going to sell for more than the 800,000. And especially, depending on the market that you're in, if you are unaware of that and you're just like, oh damn, I keep missing out. Oh damn, someone wanted more than that, and you just keep going back to the quoted range, that is totally missing the mark. So typically, when I see people figure this out, they're already aware of what 14 Smith Street sold for, right? So let's just say you're looking at 12 Smith Street, that's for sale. They already know 14 Smith Street because they've been around a little bit. They were like, oh, we went to that auction, it went nuts, and this house is actually better. That property sold for $1 million. These guys have got it quoted for 900. It doesn't make sense. It's going to sell for 1.1. So they're already making that in their those assumptions in their head. And the level of information and the level of education that I see people go through, and their ability to learn this information, it goes from 0 to like 60, 70% very quickly, especially if you're aware of what's happening. And it's, again, why we created the First Home Club, because some of these things are quite easy to teach you. Like they are easy for us to say, go and look at sold. Like just go and look at the sold stuff and you'll find out a lot of things that are happening in the market, right? Like success leaves clues. And it's the exact same thing with property. Go and see what has actually sold, not what's listed.
Yeah, and I think that this is probably where a lot of people can literally just save a truckload of money from having some guidance on this side, like what this course offers, mate. Because this is, and I was having this conversation even just last week with a client. It's just their first time buying in Australia, and they've been looking for like 3 to 6 months before they came to myself, and they have at least understood now, like it took them 3 to 6 months for them to really just learn that auctions typically sell above the range. And then this property came up that was an expressions of interest campaign, and they'd never seen that before. And they said to me, it's going to sell 200,000-300,000 above the top end of the range. Like, I just don't see value there. And I was like, no. This isn't an auction campaign. This is an expressions of interest campaign. Like, they quite often sell within the range. And like, I know this property, this agent, like it's probably going to, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, isn't this an auction? And I was like, no, it's like, it's a different sales process. Like it's completely different. And so they just dismissed it and said, I'm not looking, I don't want to look at it. Like it's over budget. And it's just because they just don't understand the intricacies of the market. So it's just another one where it's like, and if they had have gone into that with the budget of $300,000 over, they could have overpaid by hundreds of thousands, when in reality, it actually wasn't going to sell at that level at all. And I think a lot of people will just make up these rules in their head of auctions are 10% over, or what I'm hearing a lot more recently is that auctions are selling for 200,000 over the top end of the range, regardless of what price point they're quoted. If you're going off rules like that, which they might have some truth to them, you're just putting yourself at a huge risk and liability of overpaying. So like really understanding this research factor of how to do that street analysis and how to do the property side by side comparisons and everything is where I see so much value in this stuff, mate.
Yeah, heaps of value. So yeah, in terms of when someone's found the property, so let's just say you've figured it out and you're like, I really want to buy in this area, because you move from certain suburbs and you've got a different sales process. So you could have, let's just say it's this side of Warrigal Road versus the eastern side of Warrigal Road. They might have totally different sales processes. Like, it sounds crazy to think like that, but yeah, one might be selling way over the top end of the range, and then others sell within the range. Like, it's kind of weird to think like that, but it can be that close, right? Like, it can be very, very close in terms of the geography of the way that the agents work. But when you found that particular patch and you found the property, like I want to have a go at this property, you then move into the assessment and evaluation. And in today's day and age, like if there's a competitive property, you're going to have to move pretty quickly. So I've got in here 1 to 3 weeks. That's probably more like a 1 to 3 days at the moment. Yeah, you're going to want to move really quickly with the DD, so due diligence. So this is, putting building and pest clauses in or getting building and pest completed so that you've got a cleaner contract. It's really coming to that decision of, I'm buying this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's step 3, which is the assessment and the evaluation. And I mean, that's when you're probably doing contract stuff, getting contracts reviewed by conveyancers. You're probably even looking at the Section 32 yourself, which is just the second half of the contract in Victoria, and really trying to come to like an understanding on that whole stage. And then that's step 3. I'd say probably 1 day to 3 weeks is probably fairly realistic. I mean, we're auction campaigns. Some still go to auction, but then some do sell prior. So, I mean, that's another couple of weeks if you miss out, gone. But then, mate, the final step, step 4, step 4, game time. So run us through what's happening in the game time.
Yeah, so this is, you've made the decision, the DD's done, it's like we're pulling the trigger on it. So it can be around that 1 to 2 weeks on the negotiation side of things. So, we're much quicker to move on certain things, right? But sometimes we're slow to move because if there is less interest, we don't want to be trigger happy. We don't want to say, hey, we really want the property. Like when we were talking to the clients on the weekend, we're all happy in the street. And I was like, lose the smiles as we're heading into the house. I'm like, get rid of the smiles because we don't want to be showing that eagerness to the agents. You do have to hold the cards a little bit close to your chest. So it's not going to be that quick responsive. This is, again, if it's a negotiation, you just have to play the game. Like that's why it's literally called game time. You have to play the game on negotiation and just go with the flow throughout that process. But again, it just is dependent on how they're wanting offers. So if it's, offers closed by a certain period, then you just have to make sure that you're submitting the offer. But let's say that it is submit offers by 5 p.m. on the 28th of October, submit it at 5 p.m. or 4:59, right? Like you want to be right at the end there, just in case the agent goes and shops you. And then, within half an hour, I'd be texting them saying, hey, when are we going to get an answer on this?
Yeah, it's when to push and when to, take your foot off the gas as well. Mate, there's so much information I know from the course. I've seen it all in regards to how to actually negotiate at these points. And mate, a lot of value in there if you're a first home buyer or new to it. And then I think, mate, step 5, I bought now what? I love that you've called it that. It's I think it's a bit of an underrated time frame that people actually don't really consider when it comes to buying a property, mate. Talk us through what that means.
Yeah, so settlement. So this is, you have bought, but you don't have the keys yet. So what happens during this time frame? And they can be, like, honestly, settlement can be as long as you want. I've seen settlements 5 years for large blocks of land. And and then as short as 10 days. So I think the shortest one that I've ever had was 10 days. And that was just because this person was a cash buyer. The other person was like ready to go as well. And there was not really anything that the banks had to do. It was just literally line it all up on PEXA and job done. So you can have those quicker scenarios. But yeah, just looking at it from a time perspective, like what actually goes on in there, there's not too much other than, wanting to do your final inspection. You're probably going to speak to the mortgage broker to get your formal approval done. So literally as soon as that confirmation comes back saying, yep, we're good to go, you want to pass that contract straight onto your conveyancer, straight onto your mortgage broker as well, so that they can start the process to submit all your docs to get formal approval. So there is a time frame there. Some banks take 7 to 14 days just to get your formal approval sorted. But yeah, as you approach, let's just say it's a 60-day settlement, that might happen in the first 2 weeks, and then it's kind of crickets for maybe 4 weeks. And then you get a little bit closer to settlement, and then maybe 10 days out, you'd reach out to the agent and say, hey, I want to book in my final inspection. That happens within a 7-day period. And then, yeah, settlement happens. One key thing on settlement day, if you log into PEXA and it says, 10 o'clock settlement, it never happens at 10 o'clock, all right? It's always a few hours later. Sometimes it doesn't settle on the day, all right? Like sometimes they do not go through, and, if it's on a Thursday, it might not settle until the Friday. It's rare, but it can happen. So one thing to do, if you have to book a removalist on the day of settlement, try to book them in, get them to go and take all of the stuff out of your home, the one that you're moving from, and store it overnight. So they'll store it overnight, and then you can move in the next day. Go and get a hotel for the night. Splash out, celebrate that you've settled the property, and then you can move in, from 8 a.m. onwards. It's just a lot less logistically challenged on a settlement day. I've seen people like full on stressing out because their settlement hasn't occurred yet. It said it was going to be 2 o'clock, and then settlement doesn't cut. They've started moving the stuff from the old house, and now they've got this full truck, but they can't go to the new property yet because they haven't got the keys. And it's just like a big debacle. So yeah, just give yourself that time.
Yeah, that's a pro tip, I'd say, that most people wouldn't think about until it's too late. The other one, I suppose, would be try not to have it settle on a Friday, because if it does get pushed out, then you've pushed it out over to the Monday. And the amount of times you hear people that have booked the moving trucks and everything for the weekend, and now they've already paid the deposit and it's gone because it didn't settle in time.
Yeah.
So ideal world, Thursday would be the last day of the week to settle. If you could just literally choose and it means nothing to you, then you'd do that just for a bit of extra safety and protection. Mate, that's the 5 steps of how long it takes to buy a property. I'd say, yeah, this is why it can take up to 2 years. There is a lot of stuff happening in there, and there's a big process. And for anyone that is interested in the First Home Clubs, check out the show notes in the description. You will find a link to that website with all the information about what's going on to help save you not 2 years of looking in your journey. Anything else you want to touch on before I wrap up?
No, I think that's it, mate.
That's it. Well, thanks for tuning into How's the Market. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave a quick review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, as it really does help more people to find the show. And if you want to find some more tips, tools, and real talk in the Melbourne property market, head to www.tommy.com.au and you can join the mailing list. Until next week, we'll see you guys then. Catch ya.
See ya.